Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 12th annual Behind the Music panel, which happens to be our first virtual panel with WonderCon. I'm Jana Davidoff, CEO of Rhapsody PR, and though we can't be with you all in person, we are so excited to have you tune in from the comfort and safety of your own homes. Before I introduce our incredible moderator and talented panelists, I'd like to take a moment to thank Eddie, Laura, Adam, and the entire WonderCon team for finding a way to give all of you wonderful fans out there a WonderCon experience during this time. Now, on to our ultrasonic panel. Panelists, feel free to wave to the camera when you hear your name. First, he composes the tear-jerking score and several memorable songs for NBC's award-winning series, This Is Us, and he writes the music for Hulu's Marvel's Runaways and Looking for Alaska. He is also the first South Asian composer to ever receive an Emmy nomination for Best Original Score. Please welcome Siddhartha Khosla. Woo! Next, he is a Grammy-nominated composer who also won the Emmy and has several multiple nominations for his work on FX's Fargo. He also scores fan-favorite series such as Netflix's The Umbrella Academy, FX's Legion, as well as CBS's Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery. Please welcome Jeff Russo. Next, he is the first composer to ever earn 2 Emmy nominations in the main title category in the same year. You've heard his work on shows like HBO's True Blood, FX's The Americans, Amazon's Carnival Row, and upcoming on Netflix's Hollywood and Hulu's The Great. Please welcome Nathan Barr. Next, we have the composing duo behind Netflix's The Witcher, whose soundtrack not only charted #1 on iTunes, but whose original song also hit #1 on Billboard and iTunes. They've also composed shows like Amazon's The Romanoffs and Facebook's Sacred Lies, and were recently named 2 of Variety's top 10 composers to watch. Please welcome Sonya Belousova and Giona Ostinelli. Next, you've heard his music in films such as Sony's Money Monster, Warner Brothers' Fist Fight, and on TV shows such as Amazon's Emmy-winning The Man in the High Castle and Disney's DuckTales. Upcoming, he has Sony's feature film Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway, and is co-composing Fox's The Kingsman. He's not to be confused with the Don Lewis from Tiger King. Here's Dom Lewis. And last, but certainly not least, with multiple Emmy nominations and wins, he is one of the most Emmy-nominated composers of all time. He scores hit shows such as Marvel's Jessica Jones, Showtime's Homeland, Fox's 24, and Fox's upcoming Next. Thanks to his win for Jessica Jones, he won the first Emmy ever for Marvel. Please welcome Sean Callery. Woo! Woo! And now for our moderator. You'll recognize him as the lovable Toby from NBC's This Is Us, a role for which he received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, which was very well deserved. He's no stranger to music as he performs regularly under the moniker Joseph the Spouse. Please welcome Chris Sullivan.
Yeah.
Take it away, Chris.
Thank you so much. I am truly honored to be here. When I received the invitation, I jumped at the opportunity. I am familiar with and fans of all of your work, and so I'm really excited to talk to you today. And I am also intimately aware of the impact that music and scoring has underneath an actor's performance. It does about 75% of the work for me. And very grateful for it. And we'll start there. We'll start at home with my good friend, Sid Khosla. How are you, buddy?
Hi, Chris. How are you?
So it's not every day that Indian sounds and melodies are at the core of a big network American TV hit juggernaut like This Is Us. Your score is driven by these Indian influences, and they are what make the sound of the show unique. People can pick it out wherever they are. Can you tell us kind of how that came to be and how you made that work for our show?
Well, thank you for that question. Yes, and the Indian influence in the music really comes from my own soul. I'm a first generation Indian American in this country. My parents came to this country in the late 70s. I was born here and then sent back to India to be raised by my grandparents for the first few years of my life, while my parents kind of, you know, tried to get their footing in place here in the US. So as a little kid, I was listening to the Indian music that my grandparents were playing. My mom would send me little tapes of her voice singing Hindi songs. So like the first music I was ever exposed to was Indian music. And so I grew up singing a lot of Indian music. So on This Is Us, This Is Us is a show about the larger connectivity of life. It's about this idea that your great-grandmother could have made a seemingly small decision that ended up having an impact on all your other ancestors, including you, and that has an impact going forward. And when I realized that connection in the show, for whatever reason, it made me tap into the old, you know, music of my childhood. And Dan Fogelman, who created this show, is also very open to hearing sort of different sounds and always wants like the best of you to come out. And that's kind of how it all came together. It was just a combination of my own kind of soul, bringing my own soul into the show, and also having a showrunner that was open to those ideas.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you so much. Your style on the show is so unique. I've been able to pick out a bit of your score, you know, in a crowded store over the speakers by just hearing 2 guitar notes. It's really something else.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks.
We got Jeff Russo in the house. The Jeff Russo. You've scored a lot of different sci-fi series. You know, we've got Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and then shows like Legion and the Umbrella Academy. How do you differentiate between all of those different projects within the same genre? How do you make the sounds of those shows so distinctive?
Very carefully, I think is the you know, it's interesting. I think that a lot of it has to do with narrative. A lot of it has to do with you know, how the story is told. Like all the projects that you mentioned are so different from each other that it really is not that difficult for me to sort of figure out how to make each individual project sound like its own thing. You know, one of the jobs of a composer is to find the voice on a musical level of any given narrative. And, you know, I tend to write the way I write, and that might be a through line between projects, like the way I sort of fashion melodies or the way I fashion chord progressions may sort of have a similar ring to it. But you really look to how the story is told to try to find what that sound is, and each individual project sort of calls for its own thing. You know, Star Trek is sort of, you know, outside of that because it has its own sound, and trying to find an individual identity within that context was a little more complicated than, say, what Legion was. Legion, I sort of was able to figure out something that I had never done before and sort of try to utilize these synthesizer sounds that I found for the show and give that sound to the main character. But it's really about what the story is, and that sort of, they speak for themselves, and that really helps me sort of find that sound for each individual thing.
Very cool. We also have Sonya and Giona. How are you today?
Great, how are you?
Very good.
Good,
By the way,
good.
cool
It's
nails.
nice
It's good.
What's that?
Cool nails color.
Oh yeah, well, you know, things get hectic in the quarantine, you know. So, well, why not? I think it's working out. You guys, you both have a hit song. Toss a coin to your Witcher. The song hit #1 on the Billboard and iTunes charts and became a worldwide phenomenon. Tell us about its creation. This show this show hits me in a bunch of very different sweet spots, and the music has a lot to do with it. So did it come as a surprise to you guys that this song has become a worldwide success, or what is your reaction? We're here to hear your reaction.
Well, our reaction was like, thank goodness we were not the only one with the song stuck in our head for over a year, because
Remember you were telling me you were going to yoga?
Yeah, and I had it stuck. The people were like, Shavasana, relax. I'm like, how can I relax?
And you have in your head, Tossa going to your witcher,
Yeah.
a valley of plenty. Did it come as a surprise? I think yes and no. Do we expect the song to get a certain recognition from fans? I think yes, absolutely, because the song occupies a pretty significant place in the episode. It's the song that is the climax of episode 2, and it takes us out of the episode. So based on that context, yes, we thought, the fans will probably take notice of the song. To this degree that it was going to top all the charts worldwide, and the fans will be sending us covers in every single genre? Absolutely not. What do you think?
I think it's wonderful, because also, we had so much fun, and we, for each song in the show, we did like around 7 versions in different styles, because we wanted to explore all these different styles. And then we also, because the characters, when they go to new adventures.
Well, let me back up a little bit before you go. So regarding every style, what we did, we were actually brought on board very early on. And for every song we have a couple of songs in the show. There are songs that had to be written for the production. There are dances that had to be written in order to be choreographed. So for each song, we wrote between 5 to 7 versions, as Giona said, because, we were trying to explore the style, and we were trying to find any kind of, spectrum going from the most medieval to something super, super contemporary.
And there is also a version of Tossa Going to Your Witcher, which is a rap version.
Oh, yes.
Which might see the light of the day one day, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But
because why not?
Why not, right? And also, it's so wonderful to see fans covering the song to this extent, because we also cover the song, because when our characters embarks on new adventures and they go to new taverns, there are musicians in these taverns, and we're like, what the hell? They're gonna cover the songs that are famous in this world.
Well, because, our character, Jaskier, who sings the song in the show, right? At that point, he becomes a pretty famous musician in the continent of The Witcher, right? So we're like, well, why don't we also cover his songs? Because he's a famous musician at that point. So it would only be natural that when our characters are in every new town, they go in a new tavern, they would hear covers of his songs. So that's exactly what we did. So not only fans are covering this song now, we have covered this song within the context of the show.
And it's wonderful to see fans having so much fun as we did with it.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I think in the way that song is proliferating itself around the globe, I think you guys should never, from now on, you should never do an interview without that gong behind you, right in the middle.
It's there for a reason. You'll find out.
Yeah, that should be your press signature. Sid didn't bring a gong. Come on, Sid. I'm going to talk to Dom now. Dom, you've worked on some incredible films and TV shows. What is the difference between composing for a movie like the upcoming Peter Rabbit 2 and Kingsman versus shows? Versus shows like Man in the High Castle. Like, what would be the structural, or is there a difference to your process between TV and film, or between the genres? How does your process differentiate itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main difference is time, especially with the 3 projects you mentioned. I mean, and in fact, each one of those have been so amazingly different. From Peter Rabbit coming on really early and visiting the set to kind of say hi and checking in with Will, to the Kingsman, where I was set up next to the set with a rig, moved to London, and like I'm still on it, 16 months later, and then High Castle, which after 4 seasons it got easier, but at the beginning I hadn't really done TV before, and used to kind of exploring ideas and making sure everything's great, and I've gone through everything and it's not just the first idea, and then we're like, you've got 2 weeks, and like, oh my god, okay. So TV to me feels a bit more like an exam, where someone goes, go, or, you know, try and do your best. And then there's the eventual, you know, the inevitable pencils down, which actually for me is kind of cool because I really feel like I work better under pressure. And oftentimes I second guess myself when I'm on a movie, and something that I've come up with early on in the process could have been great, but because I've got this weird thing where I can't just do the first thing I think of. But sometimes actually maybe that is the best idea. So the main difference is time, and basically being able to do that, being able to kind of get through ideas and sort of record stuff on voice memos and like in the car singing stuff that comes to my head. Whereas with TV, it's just like go, and it's, you know, I just have to rely on that I can actually do my job and support the picture. And luckily with stuff like High Castle and DuckTales, it's so great anyway that the inspiration I get from that, I'm able to do it that quickly. But I'm sure the other guys, you know, they're way more experienced than me in TV, so but they're probably going, what are you talking about? But I find it really difficult to get it all done in time.
Yeah, I actually have the same experience with working as an actor in TV, because the time crunch that we have, the schedule that we're on, I may only get 2 or 3 takes at something, but then I have to rest. I rest assured in the knowledge that TV is such a collaborative art form that Sid is going to come in and smooth out my edges. The editor is going to come out and smooth out my edges. You know, the post-production team, like there's, I don't know, there's something really nice to being a part of like this invisible collaboration.
Chris, you've got no edges. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's not perfectly smooth.
Look at those nails. Look at
That's
those
right.
nails.
That's right. All right, let's talk to Nathan. Nathan Barr. Can you tell us about your very first collaboration with Ryan Murphy and his newest show on Netflix, which is entitled Hollywood?
Yeah.
Which is coming out on May 1st. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's coming out on May 1st. It takes place in 1940s Hollywood, and it's sort of Ryan and Ian's, I guess, love letter to what Hollywood was and what they wish it could have been. And so it deviates a bit from the way certain things are treated, like race and sexuality. And it's just a really interesting take on all that. And I was excited. The reason I'm sitting in front of this instrument is because this is a period instrument from the 1928, and I got to use this a bit in this show. The Ryan Murphy world is like such a different. I've never worked with anyone quite like they work. They basically, and some of you guys will shudder at this, but they basically deliver the first time they are going to hear a cue. You deliver the stems, you say a Hail Mary, and then they are going to put it where they want to put it, in whichever stems they want to use, wherever they think it's most appropriate. And it's kind of terrifying, but kind of really cool too, because something I wrote as part of one stem ends up with another stem. It basically works. It's for a character beyond the character I wrote the theme for. And so it's just been a really, 20 years into this business working, it's been a really fascinating way to work and just sort of hand the keys to them of the music. And I think it's worked out great. It was a leap of faith on my part, leap of their faith on their part to hire me. And but nonetheless, a very, very different process.
Very cool. Let's go back to Sonya and Giona for a second. You wrote and produced songs, the score, folk tunes, and dances for The Witcher. How did you connect all of these separate elements in order to unify the soundscape? There's a lot of different genres, at least as a viewer. There's this fantasy, there's this horror, there's this comedy, kind of camp element. So how did you unify all of those things with your sound?
Go for it.
Okay, so that's a great question.
Thank you. I didn't write it.
It was really important for us to make this course thematic because we have 8 episodes in the show. Every episode is 1 hour long. Every episode features 1 hour of score, songs, folk tunes, and dances. So there is a lot of material. It's very easily to get lost in all this material. So yes, it was very important for us to make this score thematic. And one of the advantages was that we were brought on board so early on that gave us an opportunity to write a lot of thematic material beforehand. So basically all the main themes that we are exploring in the show, they were all written even before we started working to picture. We had a theme for Geralt, for Yennefer, right, Nilgard, for all our main characters, for Ciri. So then by the time we started scoring to picture, right, we already had all that thematic material plus songs plus dances. So that was over an hour of music that once we got the picture, we were already able to explore that within the arc of the show.
Not only that, but also a way to connect it was like sonorities, how to build the sonorities that was medieval but at the same time contemporary. So we put out orders to a lot of instruments makers in the world to craft specific instruments for the show. Like we had the hurdy-gurdy that's sitting right there, for example, that was crafted here in the United States.
We had other instruments that were crafted like literally all over the world. Hungary, Portugal, Armenia, Russia, Emirates.
Like for example, our Duduk player.
For example.
Yeah, for example, our Duduk player. We have made a specific Duduk in Armenia that was shipped to him, which has a specific tone with it. Or for example, like this little clay instruments is a hoon, which comes from China. It took like 2 months to make it.
And it has a very, very particular sound, and it became the sound of one of our main characters. Her name is Ciri.
Right, so it was very important for us since this universe of The Witcher is so universal. There are so many species, so many characters. We wanted to be represented by so many different instruments that perhaps audience is not used to it, like tagelharpa. What the hell is a tagelharpa? So we went in exploration on all these things.
So basically, bottom line is, it was very important for us to make this universe unique, but unified at the same time. And between the two of us, so just a little bit of trivia, we recorded over 60 instruments ourselves. Because it was important for us to make sure that this universe is represented properly. And one other thing, which goes back to the thematic material, it was important for us all these hours and hours of themes and music, they're all interconnected between each other. So the way we did that is, let's take Toss a Coin to a Witcher, for example. The song itself comes in at the very, very end of episode 2, right? But the thematic material of the song, the audience starts hearing it from way earlier in the episode. Basically, as soon as the main character, Jaskier, is introduced, that's the first time we hear that song. But it comes in as a score. It sounds fun, it sounds lighthearted, right? The audience doesn't know yet what it is because we haven't heard Toss a Coin, but the material of the song is already there. Now, as the episode progresses, the material of Toss a Coin also progresses within the score. And we have another very notable scene when they're in the caves with the elves. We don't know what's going to happen. Our characters might die, right? Something might happen. And Toss a Coin comes in, but it sounds very dark, sounds much more menacing, even evil, right? We don't know what's going to happen. So by the time that song actually comes in at the end as the song, the audience, even though it feels completely fresh and new for them, but we've been preparing the audience for that material all along throughout the episode. So little tricks like that.
Yeah.
Amazing. And Sean Callery, I haven't forgotten about you. I just misread my list of questions and skipped right over yours.
This is fascinating. I love these panels because I always learn so much hearing from my friends and colleagues here. So no worries at all.
Well, we'd like to hear from you.
Move on, by the way, I'm fine here.
How different was it to create a score for a series in the superhero genre like Jessica Jones versus a psychological thriller in, I guess, more of a real world setting? Maybe not real world to us, but a more real world setting like Homeland.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of the Jessica Jones had so much. It was a pre-existing work. It was a noir colored comic, if you will, and there was so much content that existed in the printed world, and that was really the guide. They knew they wanted some sort of a noir kind of color for the show, and but they wanted it neo, a little new too. So kind of like what Giona was talking, what you were talking about making contemporary, trying to sort of take the noir kind of genre of writing and could you make it new or interesting. And it was interesting on that show because of legal things with directors when they're doing the director's cut. I wasn't allowed to look at any moving picture, but they prepared a slideshow and they just showed me still images of Kristen Ritter and Carrie Ann Moss and their offices and so forth. So her office was like gritty and dark, and Hogarth's offices, Carrie Ann Moss was white and kind of pure, and all these kind of visuals were. I actually wish I'd seen every pilot that way, because sometimes still images can give you a little bit more than a moving image. I learned from that show. So, and then in the Homeland world, Homeland's almost filmed like a documentary. It's like you're kind of a voyeur. You're kind of watching everything that's happening, the biggest notes I always get on Homeland is that if the music's too noticeable, like if it stands out, I've done something wrong. I have to, it has to be effective, but leave no fingerprints, so to speak. And so I thought that show was going to be a walk in the park because it was only 15, 20 minutes, and it turned out to be probably the most difficult project I've had in my career, just in terms of precision and nuance and the sculpting of the show, and we had very, very demanding and loving producers, but it was a ride, and it's ending. It's over this Sunday, so I'm kind of sad.
Yeah, it's got to be what a transition to kind of come out of an 8 seasons?
Yeah, 106, 108 episodes, something like that. 9 years of my life. So it's a. I mean, you want it to go on, and there's a part of you that knows it can't. Like, when I finished 24, people are like, "Yeah, it's time to kind of," But you're nostalgic, and you feel a little.
Yeah.
You feel a little bit of, So, but you make a lot of friends, and hopefully they stay on, right?
Yeah. Hopefully.
By the way, This Is Us is my wife's favorite show, and she loves your character. When I walk in, I hear Sid's music. I do not watch the show because I don't watch much television, but you have a major fan in my wife, I have to tell you.
Thank you so much. I frequently joke that should be our marketing. This Is Us, your wife's favorite show. Or This Is Us, your girlfriend loves it. And I'm frequently on the street, like, in New York, I was getting on a plane, and some cop came up to me. He's like, "Hey man, I was wondering if I could get a photo for my girlfriend. She killed me. I get a photo." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you recognized me." "Nice try, buddy. This photo's for you, and I know it. Let's take it." Jeff, and thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Jeff, with Star Trek Picard, you'd mentioned it earlier, and you talked kind of like paying homage to that the musical heritage of the show by incorporating past pieces in the Picard score. Is there a thought process behind that? Are they asking you to do that? Are they encouraging you to do that? How does that come about?
No one asked me to do that, but I come to working on Star Trek, on Picard and on Discovery as a huge fan of the whole thing, of the whole world of it. I was a huge fan of The Next Generation, a huge fan of the original series and Voyager and all these other shows, and especially the movies. But so when I would see certain things, I'd be like, oh, and I'd sit at the piano and I'd play that little da 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 da, and it would feel right to me. So I sort of came to writing that score as a fan as well as a creator and storyteller. So it was a pretty simple thing. It was pretty, it wasn't like too much thought doesn't go into that. It's really more about like, how does it feel in the moment? And you can't do it too much because then you sort of gild the lily with it, but it can be very effective to utilize motifs that will bring the viewer right back to where you want them to go. I sort of utilize the same technique in writing themes for characters. You do something in episode 1 that you want to tie to episode 8, and when you play that one little motif in episode 8, it takes you right back to that. So the same holds true with taking you back 25 years or 30 years to a different series, when you have some of those same characters there. And also, some of it's just fun. Like I want people who are fans of the shows to have fun watching and to really be engaged. And, you know, when Jean-Luc Picard stands on the bridge of any ship and says, engage, if I don't play that theme, I'm an idiot. Like, why wouldn't I do that? Because I want everybody to go, yes! That's what I want everybody to do when that happens, because I wanted to do that. And that's where that idea comes from. It's really just about, like, if it's there, why not incorporate that somehow? And you know, one of the best times I've had writing was being able to sort of utilize a motif like that and then fashion new and interesting themes and motifs around that, so it can all sort of thread together to become a fabric of, you know, part of the fabric of the sound of the universe. That's been the most thrilling part of working on it, you know, for me.
Very cool. Dom, you've worked in animation quite a bit. Is there a difference in your approach to composing music for animation versus live action?
I mean, I try not to. I think maybe subconsciously there's always that thing with animation that more often than not, you can't go too dark with something, especially, you know, on the flip side when I'm doing something like High Castle, you have to go super dark. And I can never kind of flex that muscle when I'm in animation world. On the TV side of things, there's been some movies which I've been able to go there because, you know, directors will often go, no, you don't want to do, like, don't do the kid thing. We need to be serious about it. This is a real movie. Treat it as such. So I actually try not to kind of differentiate between the two. I mean, obviously the palette is different. You know, if you take something like the King's Man, which is very kind of orchestral based, to, I don't know, like DuckTales, for example, which is a hybrid and extremely floral and very, you know, traditional orchestra with lots of synths and band and stuff. Whereas, you know, if I tried to write anything like that for, you know, someone like Matthew Vaughn or Will Gluck, they'd be like, what? Whoa, what are you doing? This is terrible. They would say this is animation music. So, and I've got that note a few times actually. This sounds like animation. It sounds like a kid's movie. What are you doing? This is rubbish. So I think maybe subconsciously, because I am a big child, when I have those projects in front of me, I can tap into that more. And I don't have to go to the dark place I go to for some of the live action stuff. So yeah, I mean, to sum up, I think I desperately try to treat everything, you know, the same amount of seriousness, whether it's, well, the same line, whether it's funny or serious. I try and treat it the same if it was a live action or animation, but maybe somewhere back there, the kid in me just wants to, like, go crazy and do kind of like, you know, Animaniacs or Mickey Mouse stuff. You know, I fight it constantly.
Yeah, that's, you know, that had never occurred to me. You know, obviously, when actors have to go to dark places, it can have a pretty heavy effect on them from time to time. And it never occurred to me that if you had to live in that world, maybe sometimes working alone in a dark, soundproof room for however many weeks or months, that might have a pretty heavy effect.
Yeah, I've gone there. I mean, there's been times in High Castle when you've got, like, you know, thousands of people Heil Hitlering, you know, you just have to turn the dialogue off because you go to this horrible place. And sometimes that's good to kind of get the juices flowing for musically, but it definitely has affected me where I have to be like, go outside and, you know, watch some comedy or something, put on some Eddie Izzard just to kind of lighten the mood or something.
Right. But the perfect Eddie Izzard's the perfect palate cleanser. I love it. Nate, let's come back, and because I want to talk about, what do I want to talk about? I kind of want to talk about that instrument. There was they'll edit around this. Don't even worry about it. Maybe. You had pointed out that the instrument behind you, is that the same historic instrument that you used in the main title for Carnival Row, or is it a different instrument?
Excellent segue from that. Excellent. Yeah, that's So this is the organ that was used in the movies like The Sound of Music and Star Trek and Patton, and it occupies 6 rooms in this building. It's 1,366 pipes. Bernard Herrmann used it, Jerry Goldsmith, John Williams. It's got an incredible history. And so I got to feature it a couple times this year in various projects, including Carnival Row. So the main title, Carnival Row, is entirely that instrument with a solo fiddle and then a choir. We recorded here, a women's choir.
What do you mean it takes up 6 rooms?
Well, when I play my piece, I'm going to have the organ play it, and I'll run you upstairs and show you the pipes. So it's actually, yeah, it's 6 rooms. It's an enormous instrument. This is the remote control for the actual organ, which lives in the walls of the building. It's kind of hard to explain, and I hear Sid, Sean, and Jeff going, "Oh God, here he goes."
When he says that it lives, he's not joking.
It sounds like it breathes and bleeds.
Yeah.
That's your goal.
Special instrument. It was built in 1928. It was at Fox Studios from 28 to 98 when I bought it 7 years ago, and it was a 5-year restoration while I built the building for it. So it's definitely a special piece of Hollywood history, and I've been loving getting it back in. And Sean, over a cigar and some whiskey, has drunkenly played it on multiple occasions.
I know, and thankfully that's not being posted anywhere. But I will say that that instrument is like that instrument has a soul. I mean, it has a spirit and a soul. It's unlike anything I've ever played or seen. It's really quite a treasure that you've restored there, Nate. I mean,
thanks.
I can't wait to hear it. Sid, my good man.
Hi, Chris.
On Looking for Alaska, you have another deeply emotional score, but with a very different instrumentation and kind of palette than on This Is Us. So what's the process in creating two very emotional scores, but with different soundscapes?
The key was using Nate's organ on the score. I mean, that was, no, I did not use. I one day hope to use that organ on something if he lets.
Anytime.
And speaking of that organ for a second, like if any of you have an opportunity to go to Nate's studio and see it firsthand, it's really a remarkable thing. It's really beautiful and highly recommend. It's a good, like, it should be like an LA, like a tour guide spot. You know, I feel like we should make that happen somehow.
Thank you.
Maybe in 2021.
Yeah. When we're allowed to leave our homes.
Yeah.
The first thing we're doing. Looking for Alaska. Yes. So Looking for Alaska was based on this John Green novel. That's an incredible book. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's an incredible book. And Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, who I've done a bunch of projects with, created the show. This was Josh's baby that he was trying to make for 13 years. It was going to be a feature film at one point, and that fell through. And finally, it became this limited series for Hulu that aired last year. That show is about a high school girl named Alaska who tragically dies in a car accident. And the entire series is each episode is X number of days. So the first episode is I forget how many days out from the death, and in each subsequent episode gets closer and closer to the date. And it's an incredibly beautifully shot, beautifully performed show that kind of went under the radar last year. And one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. And in terms of bringing the emotionality to the sound and the score of the show, Josh Schwartz and I had a lot of conversations early on about just completely immersing myself in the lives of these characters. And if I remember being a high schooler and feeling every emotion almost 100 times more than I probably feel today. You know, I remember love feeling like the most euphoric, greatest feeling ever. I remember breaking up with a girlfriend and that being like feeling like something had just died inside of me, you know? So every emotion was really heightened, and the key in the score was I wanted you to close your eyes and listen to the score and have every sort of emotion feel that much more heightened. And so we made it a point to do that. As a sonic, and the way we did that was kind of the sound of the show was very, I kind of pulled from some influence. The influences I pulled from were like early Sigur Rós. And I found like Sigur Rós music that I was listening to back in like 2000, I don't know if this is early Sigur Rós, but 2005 era Sigur Rós, which is the year that this show takes place, to me had this sort of like end of the world feeling to the music constantly. It was wide, it was expansive. So that was kind of sonically, the emotional sort of influences came from that a little bit. And also from trying to make myself feel like a teenager again, and how heightened everything felt. So very different palette from This Is Us, where I'm using sort of like tanpuras and Indian instrumentation. That in This Is Us might be even more organic, I think. But Looking for Alaska was a lot of synths. We had a lot of live strings on the score, running pianos through crazy effects, and that was it.
Yeah, the other aspect of between the two different types of composition is also, on This Is Us, you have several original songs, including Memorized, which you co-wrote with Taylor, our friend Taylor Goldsmith from the band Dawes, which hit #1 on the Billboard soundtrack charts. And now you guys, it seems like original songs from you two, or mostly from you. From you and Taylor, and from you, have become more of more prominent in the soundscape of This Is Us. What's it like working with Taylor and bringing these original songs into the show?
So yeah, I met Taylor Goldsmith. Taylor is the singer-songwriter of the band Dawes, and I met Taylor at a This Is Us party a couple years ago. And Taylor is married to Mandy Moore, who plays Rebecca, our matriarch, and I've been a huge fan of Taylor's for many years. And we met at this party, and we had this sort of like, we promised each other that let's get together one day and write a song. And it felt very sort of LA and Hollywood, and there was no way it was going to happen, kind of thing. But a year later, an opportunity came up in the show to write an original song, and I called Taylor to write it with me. And now we've written a couple of these together, and that collaboration is really beautiful. He's an incredible lyricist, and I think between like his lyric writing and my melodic sensibilities, we've found a really wonderful partnership creatively. And it's and I think one thing this show has taught me, working with Taylor and working with another songwriter, Chris Pierce, earlier on, is we spend so much time in our studios by ourselves. That we're longing for collaboration without even knowing it. And so when we're in positions to actually collaborate with people and other composers and other musicians, I find like some of my best work comes out of that. And with Taylor, that's what's happened. So earlier this season, we had to write a song for Chris Sullivan's character. He plays Toby, and Toby and Kate have a son named Jack. And Jack, we find out, is visually impaired. He's blind, and he ends up becoming this mega superstar in the future, pop star. And Dan Fogelman asked me to write his big hit song, and
no pressure.
No pressure. And he's like, dude, this is going to be a hit song 30 years from now. And I was like, how the hell do we do that? Like, what is it going to sound like? So Taylor and I got together. We wrote this song. We wrote it on an acoustic guitar, and I was playing it on some synth pad, and we were kind of, and ultimately the final production of it ended up being this way poppy. I'm going to perform this later, but or a minute of it later. But the production of it was very sort of, it was pop forward, and we tried to figure out what music 30 years from now would sound like, and we decided it would actually sound like music from today, because music is cyclical. And we figured pop music from today would sort of repeat itself 30 years from now, with some minor changes. And so we wrote this song, and it was a huge part of the end of our first episode. He's performing the song on stage in front of thousands of fans. We filmed it at the Greek Theater in the middle of a Chicago concert. It was really cool. And then it got #1 in the iTunes soundtrack charts, which was awesome. We didn't have Witcher level success, but it was cool. It was really awesome.
But we have 2 panelists with #1 songs on this. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Go Witcher.
Next time, Sid, bring the gong.
I see that. I don't have a gong. All I have is that.
You want to go #1, baby? You got to bring the gong. We had talked about Homeland coming to an end, Sean, but you also brought up 24, which is considered to be one of the greatest bingeable shows in the history of television. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between working on network versus streaming? What that workflow might be like, what that oversight might be like, what's allowed, or is there more wiggle room in streaming than network? What have been the differences between those two juggernaut television shows?
Well, Doug kind of alluded to it, is that the time crunch is pretty extraordinary in both formats. But 24 was interesting because they did 24 episodes between October and May. I mean, it was very, very dense. Jessica Jones did 12 episodes in sort of the same amount of time. And Homeland did the same thing. Now, there's a new series about an AI that's coming out on Fox, I think next month, called Next, which is about like an Alexa device that becomes sentient and starts to mess with people's lives. I think because the world is so unstable right now, I don't think they want to air another show where their lives are out of control because of technology. So I think they're going to take a breath on that one. Yeah. But that's a 10-episode arc, and I can't say that this is and the biggest difference is that in network there's commercial breaks. So when you're spotting the show and you're looking at where the music has to go, you're taking into account that you're watching 7-8 minutes at a time, and there are commercial breaks. In Homeland's case, there were no breaks, so you could spot it more cinematically, and you had broader arcs and more nuance. And then, a 10-episode storyline on Homeland would really have some real potential emotional payoff because of the way the story's set up. And it's so they have each different sets of challenges. But thankfully, I've been lucky enough to be on shows that last more than a year, and they kind of gel. They have an opportunity to gel. I mean, look, This Is Us. I mean, it's gelling. It's becoming its own thing. Fargo and True Blood. I mean, there are examples everywhere of this. And so it's a different flavor, but same job.
Awesome. We're gonna wrap up pretty quickly here and get on to to what we've all been waiting for. We want to get a closer look at that organ. Dom, I've just been told, Dom, that you usually have really good composing stories, crazy composing stories. So I'm giving you a second to kind of think about it. I'm going to talk to Jeff for a second, and we need a crazy composing story, and then that'll take us into the performances. Jeff.
Okay, cool.
Jeff, you've worked with Noah Hawley on numerous projects, including Legion and Fargo. Can you tell us about your collaboration and what else you're working on together?
Wow, it's an interesting collaboration. He was a musician when he was younger. That's how he started what he started doing when he was in college, and then he went on to become a writer. So our ability to communicate about music is pretty easy. He understands music, so he can sort of communicate what he wants to me in a very effective way. We're also sort of kindred musical spirits. Like, we both really grew up listening to the same music and enjoying the same music. When we started working on Legion, one of the things he said was, I've been really thinking about Dark Side of the Moon a lot as a touchstone inspiration. And I was like, that's funny, because I was thinking the same thing, and that's my favorite album of all time. And he's like, well, that's weird, because it's my favorite album of all time. It was one of those sort of kinds of relationships that sort of morphed from those kinds of conversations. We're currently working on the 4th season of Fargo. which has been really great. It's stylistically not so far off from the last 3 seasons, but from a musical standpoint, it does take a turn, which we try to do in every season. But from a story perspective, it's very interesting to see the entire thing turn. We've gone even farther back in time, and how he's tying all the stories together. It's pretty incredible. So that's what we're working on right now. And our sort of working relationship now goes back about 11 years. So it's been a lot of fun doing all of these different types of projects with him.
I can't wait for season 4. Fargo has been one of my favorite series ever. So I'm really excited.
It's a good time. It's really fun.
All right, Dom, what do you got?
The pressure's on now. Okay. All right. So, I mean, for the people that don't know, I worked at remote control for a long time before I was lucky enough to be the guy in the chair doing my own stuff.
What's remote control for people who don't know?
Remote control is Hans Zimmer's studio in Santa Monica, which, so many people, so many amazing composers have gone through there, from John Powell, Harry Gregson Williams, Nick Dennis-Smith, Rupert Gregson Williams, Henry Jackman. I mean, I could, we don't have time to list everybody.
Tom Lewis.
Thank you very much. But no. So all my stories come from within those walls. So this one's a pretty good one. I'm fairly green. I've done about a couple of projects for Hans and whoever needs help and whatever. And I'm working on Rango with Hans' team and Hans with Gore Verbinski. So I'm sitting in my room. I've kind of got a cue together for this scene. And, Hans comes in. And he takes a listen to it. He's like, no, it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. He's going to want the temp. He's going to want the temp. So, the temp is temp's Jack Sparrow. Bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba dum bum ba. So I basically retroactively fit the Rango tune to that, to base temp copying, which we all know is the bane of our existence. But I was asked to do that, so that's what I did. So I haven't got much time. Quickly print the thing. Go into Hans's room, which is this. I mean, if you've seen it online or on interviews or anything, it's this like crimson, skull lit, almost like old school European brothel. It's very intimidating in the first place. Not that I know what a brothel looks like, but so I go in there. Gore Verbinski's there, the producer's there, the editor's there. Hans is sitting in his chair, and I'm at the back. And cues get played down, and then it comes to the cue, and we get like 7 seconds in, 8 seconds in, and Gore's like, I'm not going to swear, but Gore's like, wait, what the beep is this? This is just the temp. What the hell is this? So then no, it gets better. So then Hans swivels round, looks at me, and goes, "Yeah, Dom, what is this?"
Oh man!
And I'm like, and then he gives me a little look, going, "Sorry, mate, I had to throw you under the bus there." But I'm like, "Oh my God, you just told me to do that." But I mean, you live and learn, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But the great, if it had been amazing, and Gore would have loved it, he would have done the same thing and gone like, "Dom, great piece, awesome, well done." So. Yeah. You live and die by the sword on that one.
It definitely needs to be a T-shirt that says Hans Zimmer made me do it.
I've got so many of those stories, but we don't have time.
That's fantastic. Well, now we're getting to the part that I certainly have been waiting for. This lucky audience is going to get to see these wonderful composers perform their compositions from the shows and films that they've just been talking about right now. So is there anything that we need to do to prep, or is Jeff, are you ready?
Oh boy. Yeah, okay, let me just move this. Hold on one second. Move this like, hold on, like this.
Up first, coming to you live.
I think this should do, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Jeff, tell us what you're going to play.
I first of all, I will say I'm not a pianist, so this is me faking it. But I'm going to play the theme from Star Trek Picard. And what you hear now is what I did about a year ago when I sat down to write the theme. I sort of sat down and started playing it. And then at the end of like an hour or so, I had played this entire thing in this way. So it's me being very sort of ham-fisted on the piano, because I'm not terribly great. But this is the way this all sort of began. So here it is. There you have it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to ask Dom to play the suite from Peter Rabbit, if he would be so kind.
Yeah. So again, I'm also not a pianist, but
awful lot of pianos around here and no pianists.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just hit play on a computer. That'd be so lame, wouldn't it? But okay, here you go. I'll try. Let's see what happens.
Can you tell a story while you do it, Dom?
I'm gonna sing, otherwise I would. Is that gating? Is that better? Does that sound okay? All right, cool.
Beautiful. May I please hear? I got to see that organ. Nate, can we please hear Jack's theme from Hollywood?
Yeah, Dom just said, how lame would it be to press a button? That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Thanks, Dom. I don't play this organ, but we programmed it and wrote it. So here's Jack's.
That's incredible. I love it.
This is the actual organ playing this live. Let me turn it around. So that's the organ. That's Jack's theme. I'll just show you really quick.
Maybe while you're walking, can you tell us those panels that we're opening and closing? What is happening there mechanically for people who don't? For me.
Control volume, and everything you see is 1928. So here are all some of the pipes. This is what was just playing.
Wow.
And then this is all the percussion.
And this is the same type of setup that would have gone into a silent movie theater for someone to be playing the score live.
And this is the actual organ, but it's Sound of Music, and it's got all this stuff. It's been played on John Williams, and then this one, all these pipes.
Wow.
So huge instrument.
Wow. Yeah, I said press play on a computer, not that amazing. Just to clarify.
Anyhow, there you go. That's just 3 of the 6 rooms, but that's enough. Take care. That's it.
That was awesome. Thank you. Next, Sonya and Giona with an excerpt from their hit song, Toss a Coin to Your Witcher, from The Witcher.
With triangles.
Not only, well, as we already said, we performed over 60 instruments ourselves on this show. Obviously, we cannot play all of them right now, but we'll try to play as many as we can.
When a humble bard graced her ride along with Geralt of Rivia, along came this song. From when the white wolf fought a silver-tongued devil, his army of elves at his host did they rebel. They came after me with masterful deceit. They broke the mallet and they kicked in my teeth, while the devil's horns minced our tender meat. And so cried the Witcher, he can't be bleed. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty.
Sean, would you be willing to play
Yes.
the theme from Homeland for us?
Yes, and kind of like Jeff, I realized the original theme in a piano reduction. I had to kind of reacquaint myself with how the hell to play it. And by the way, are we all formatted the same way? Like I'm all of a sudden thinking the Brady Bunch, like we're all looking around, and I'm definitely in the Florence Henderson position on the top. And Chris, you're Andy Davis. Is that?
Yes.
Is that okay, good.
I requested this spot. Yeah.
So this is the Homeland theme. That come through?
That absolutely came through, and it raised my heart rate the same way that the beginning of an episode of Homeland would do. You know, the music that you all compose, and it's the DNA of the show, and so you can play these songs, and it takes me physiologically to the place where I'm experiencing that piece of art. I appreciate it so much.
Cool.
And we're going to close it out with Sid Khosla on the guitar, playing some of Memorize, the original song that he wrote with Taylor.
All right, here it is.
Can one wrong turn give me new direction? Can one false move bring me one true friend? Could a stranger ever end up being you? We took it back in all directions, reaching out towards the door. Is there a message, a pathway to something more? Oh, in the quiet way you caught my eye. Oh, caught enough to get you memorized. I found my way, found my way to you. I found my way, found my way to you. I found my way, found my way to you.
This has been such an honor for me. Thank you so much to all of you. I hope to someday have my performance vastly improved by all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to WonderCon and to Dana and Alex at Rhapsody PR for organizing this event. And thank you all for watching from home. Stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to one another.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
This is awesome, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Sully.
So much,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank